When you think of the Victorian era, what's the first thing that comes to mind? You might say Queen Victoria, Charles Dickens, Alfred Tennyson, or Buckingham Palace. Well, we understand many things come to mind when we know about Victorians. The Victorians were famous for many reasons. Just as they invested a lot of time in making various sophisticated things, they did not spend much time with their hygiene. As a result, various diseases were increasing. So today, you are going to find out what hygiene was like during the rise of industrial Britain on the Histrofacts Show. Before I start, if you are new to the channel and love history, definitely subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Thank you. Do you love to bathe? If the answer is yes, then you will be in a lot of trouble in the Victorian era. In the Victorian era, bathing was rare and sometimes challenging task, especially for the lower and middle classes. Most homes didn't have a dedicated bathroom. Only the very wealthy could afford indoor plumbing, which was still new and expensive. For most people, baths took place in a large portable metal tubs, often set in the kitchen or living room near the fireplace to stay warm. The tub had to be filled by hand, using buckets of water heated over a fire. In poorer families, the whole household might share the same bath water. The father usually bathed first, followed by the rest of the family, with children going last. By the time everyone was done, the water would be quite dirty. In cities, especially in places like London, many people didn't have the space to bathe at home, so they went to public bathhouses. These bathhouses provided large communal baths, and people paid a small fee for access of hot water and privacy. Even in public bathhouses, hygiene wasn't perfect. Clean water and soap were often in short supply, so people couldn't always bathe as thoroughly as they wanted. The soap used in the Victorian era was often homemade or purchased in rough blocks. It was usually harsh, made from animal fat and lye, and not as gentle as modern soaps. When you have managed to clean yourself of all this, it is time to drink water. In the Victorian era, drinking water was a serious health issue, especially for people living in cities. Many urban areas grew rapidly during this time due to the Industrial Revolution, but the infrastructure to supply clean water didn't keep up. Most people got their water from rivers, wells, or public pumps. These sources were often contaminated because industrial waste, human sewage, and animal waste were dumped into rivers and streets. Wells could also be polluted if they were near cesspits or sewage system. There were no proper sewage systems in many places, especially in the early part of the Victorian period. Waste from homes and factories were dumped into nearby rivers or open sewers, which could easily contaminate water sources. One of the biggest problems was human waste getting into drinking water. Without proper waste disposal, diseases like cholera, typhoid, and dysentery spread rapidly. The famous 1854 cholera outbreak in London was traced back to a contaminated public water pump on Broad Street. Wealthier Victorians often had better access to cleaner water. In some cases, they could afford to have water brought to their homes through pipes, or they would boil their water before drinking. Poorer people, especially those living in crowded slums, often had to rely on shared pumps, wells, or public fountains, many of which were heavily contaminated. Boiling water wasn't always an option for them due to a lack of fuel or resources. Now, when the drinking water is finished, it is time to clean the clothes. In the Victorian era, washing clothes was a long, labor-intensive process that often took up an entire day, usually called wash day. Most people didn't wash their clothes every day. Everyday garments like shirts or undergarments were washed weekly, while outer garments were washed less often. Many people wore layers of underclothes to protect their more expensive outer clothing from sweat and dirt. The underclothes were washed more frequently. In many homes, hot water was precious, so families sometimes shared bath water, or water was reused for multiple tasks, including laundry. Soap in the Victorian era was often unscented or had a strong, unpleasant smell due to the lye. Clothes didn't always smell fresh and clean as they do today. Clean clothes were more about being free from visible dirt rather than smelling nice. Now is the time to take care of your teeth. In the Victorian era, people didn't have toothbrushes or toothpaste like we do now. Instead, they used things like small twigs, cloth, or even their fingers to clean their teeth. The Victorian diet included a lot of sugar, especially with the rise of confectionery. This led to increased cases of tooth decay and cavities. When people had severe dental problems, the common solution was to extract the affected tooth. This was often done without anesthesia, making it a very painful procedure. By the end of the Victorian era, some advancement in dental techniques began to emerge, including the use of anesthesia. In the Victorian era, toilets and sanitation were a big challenge, especially for the growing population in cities. Most people, especially in the early Victorian period, did not have indoor plumbing. They used outhouses, which were small outdoor structures with a wooden seat over a hole in the ground. Waste collected in pits underneath, which had to be cleaned out regularly. These were common in both cities and rural areas. Inside homes, people used chamber pots, which were kept under beds or in closets. These pots were used for going to the bathroom, especially at night. In the morning, the pots were emptied went into streets or rivers. Poor waste management led to diseases like cholera and typhoid, which spread rapidly in overcrowded cities. Over time, the development of better sewage systems and indoor plumbing improved public health and reduced these diseases. That was the hygiene of that time. Don't forget to tell us how you felt. Would you like to live in the Victorian era? I really want to know. Let me know in the comments. And tell me which era of hygiene you want to know about next. Thanks a lot for watching the full video. See you in the next video. Stay well.